I lived in a one-story house with a hard dirt patio and a lemon tree pressed up against the north wall. It was just my mother, Elena, my little sister, Sophia, and me, Mateo. For weeks I kept waking up with my back stiff like I had slept on concrete, and a steady ringing in my ears that never rose or fell. I blamed my mattress. I shifted the bed, then shoved it to the opposite wall. I tried sleeping with the window open so the night air could cool the room. Nothing changed. That morning, the patio smelled like the drizzle from the night before. Wet earth and citrus leaves. I went out with the hose to wash the dirt down toward the drain, dragging the stream along the base of the lemon tree where the roots bulged from the ground. That is when I saw a thin edge of black plastic peeking between a root and the soil. It was too straight to be trash that had blown in. I knelt and scraped at the spot with my fingers. A flat stone sat there like a lid. When I lifted it, the dirt gave a little soft in a way it should not have been. Under the stone was a black plastic bag, tied tight with a red ribbon. It was damp and packed hard, like it had been buried hours ago instead of months. I carried it to the far side of the patio, away from the back door, and set it on a plastic tray. I told myself it was probably something the neighbor kids hid. My hand still shook when I took out my pocket knife. The blade snagged as it cut, and a sour smell came out. Not rot, not garbage, something like candle wax and wet soil kept in a closed drawer. I tipped the bag onto the tray. Damp dirt fell first, then short gray feathers, their tips cut clean, stuck together with dark wax. 2 long needles slid out and clicked against the plastic. A small lock of hair dropped in a coil, tied with rough twine that smelled like hairspray. Last was a folded piece of paper, thick from being handled, with my name on it in black marker, Mateo. The letters were bold and sure, like whoever wrote them had time and no doubt. My ears rang the same flat note. I tried to make it make sense. Maybe the hair was mine from a haircut. Maybe someone wanted to scare me for a laugh. But there was no joke in the weight of that paper. I scooped everything back into the bag, the feathers, the needles, the hair, the paper, the dirt. I tied it up again, tighter this time, and carried it to the back of the patio where we kept an old bucket with a lid. I sealed it inside and slid the bucket behind a stack of broken tiles. Right then my phone rang. It was a local number with no contact name. I answered, expecting a wrong call. No one spoke. I heard breathing pressed close to the microphone, slow and steady, as if the person was holding the phone against their mouth. Then the call ended. I stood with the phone against my ear after it went dead. Elena called from the kitchen asking who it was. I told her it was nothing, a wrong number, and I hated how thin my voice sounded. I went back to washing the patio, pushing muddy water toward the drain, moving 2 pots, clearing the space around the lemon tree. I kept glancing at the spot where the stone had been, expecting to see more plastic rise from the soil. By noon, the water level in the Tinaco, the rooftop tank, had dropped more than it should have. I checked the shower valve, the sinks, the outside spigot. Everything was closed. I told myself we must have used more water than I thought. That evening, as the sun slipped behind the roofs and the air cooled, the dogs next door went silent, then started barking all at once. Not at the street. They stared at the roof above my bedroom and barked toward the same corner near the lemon tree wall. Inside, I heard short steps on the tiles, careful, measured, always moving toward that exact point. Then came a soft, dragging sound, like a sack being pulled slowly and stopped. Then pulled again. I did not climb up. I stood in the hallway with the lights off, trying to decide whether I was hearing a cat, a branch scraping, anything normal. The steps repeated twice with the same path, and then stopped. The house felt smaller after that, like the ceiling had lowered. I went to bed late. When sleep finally caught me, it did not feel like rest. It felt like something settling onto my chest. I could breathe, but the pressure stayed, steady and patient, and the ringing in my ears drilled through it. Before dawn I woke and saw 2 round bruises on my left forearm, clean circles the size of big coins. They did not hurt much when I pressed them. Just enough to make my stomach tighten. Elena saw them while Sophia ate cereal and said they looked like suction marks. I laughed and said I must have bumped myself, but my laugh came out wrong. When your name is buried in your yard, your sleep gets buried with it. I kept that thought quiet, because saying it out loud would pin it in place. The next day I tried to force the house back into routine. Sophia dressed for school, hair still damp, backpack thumping against her knees as she ran to the door. Elena hung laundry in the thin winter sun. I sat at the living room table with my paperwork and tools spread out, pretending the bucket in the back corner of the patio did not exist. Every few minutes, the streetlight pole outside flickered, and the ringing in my ears stayed locked on the same note. I kept looking for an ordinary reason. Maybe the bruises were from sleeping with my arm pressed against the bed frame. Maybe the heavy feeling in my chest was anxiety that had finally found a place to sit. Maybe the bag under the lemon tree was just someone dumping junk. The problem was that ordinary reasons do not show up tied with a red ribbon, buried under a stone, like a secret. By late afternoon, the dogs next door started their strange habit again. They went to the back of their yard, noses lifted, and stared up at my roofline. Their barking had a hard edge to it, as if they were warning another animal to stay back. I stepped into the patio with my flashlight in hand and waited by the door, listening for anything that might explain it. When the neighborhood quieted and the last television sounds faded behind walls, I stayed awake, eyes on the lemon tree shadow. At midnight, a dull thump landed on the tiles above my room. It was not the sharp tap of a pebble. It was the sound of weight meeting ceramic. Then the slow dragging began. The same careful pull I had heard the night before. It moved along a short route, stopped, then moved again with the same rhythm, like someone marking the corner by touch. I opened the patio door and stepped out. The air was cold and smelled of damp dirt. My beam cut across the lemon tree and the strip of ground at its base. The soil was disturbed again. The surface looked scooped and pressed back, still wet, the edge pale where fresh earth had been turned. There was a second bag there. This one was transparent, tight with a double knot. Inside, I could see dirt and a strip of tape with the date written in black pen, neat and even. And pressed flat against the plastic was a photo of me, cut from an old birthday post. I recognized a sliver of balloon in the corner of a cake. The photo had a clean, straight cut, not torn, not chewed by scissors. Whoever had made this wanted it precise. For a few seconds, I stood perfectly still, because my brain kept trying to correct the scene. If I just stared long enough, maybe the bag would turn into a piece of trash. Maybe the tape would have a different name, but the date was today, and the face in the photo was mine. I did not open it. I did not touch it with bare hands. I kept my light fixed on the roots while I scanned the wall for fresh marks. The plaster was unchanged, but the soil showed finger grooves where someone had pressed the bag into place. The smell was the same as the first, wax and new moisture. It felt like the patio had been used as an altar while we slept. I slid the transparent bag into a thicker one, tied it, and carried it to the back corner near the first. My hands shook when I washed them at the kitchen sink. I rinsed my knife and put it away like I could scrub the idea of it clean. Elena asked why I was up. I told her I heard cats on the roof. Even as I said it, the excuse sounded weak. Cats do not bury photos. I tried to sleep anyway. Every time I started to drift, the dragging sound returned for a few seconds above my ceiling, as if someone was confirming they still had access. No voices, no laughter, only that measured movement, and then silence. The pressure on my chest came back, steady, and I found myself counting minutes without looking at the clock, afraid that time itself was part of the trap. At dawn, I went straight outside. The lemon tree stood still, leaves glossy with leftover moisture. The disturbed dirt had settled a little, but the fresh edge was still visible close to the root. I checked the wall seam and the shaded strip under the tiles, hoping to find a simple culprit, a broken pipe, a burrowing animal. There was nothing. The bruises on my arm were the same size, and the ringing in my ears stayed level, like it had decided to live there. 2 bags in the same spot meant intention. The roof steps meant someone used the tiles as a root. I stopped thinking about coincidence. I also stopped thinking I could handle it alone. In our neighborhood, everyone knows at least one older woman who understands these things, not as movies, but as work. People call it brujería, or trabajos. They talk about it quietly, half believing, half ashamed, until it lands on their doorstep. The name I heard most was Dua Maritza. She lived half a block away behind an old rusted gate. People said she could spot a bad job, the way other people spot spoiled food. I decided I would go to her as soon as she was free. I also decided I would not open the bags again. Not for curiosity. Not to prove anything. I pulled out an old plastic bucket with a lid and put both bags inside, sealed, and kept the bucket away from the door, like you keep a snake away from bare feet. Later that morning, I walked to Dua Maritza's house. The sun was already warm, and children were yelling somewhere down the street. I expected to feel ridiculous, standing at an old woman's gate with a story about bags under a lemon tree, but the closer I got, the more my chest tightened, like my body knew it was walking toward a line it should not cross. Her gate was shut, chained from the inside. I called her name through the bars, no answer. A neighbor watering plants said she had gone out early and might not return until late. When I asked when I could catch her, the neighbor looked at my face and said, almost casually, that if it was urgent, I should come before sunrise. Windu Emeritza usually sat in her patio with coffee before sunrise. I walked back home with the word repeating in my head. The people who do not believe in this stuff do not schedule it like that. They do not set times and rules. The idea that there was a right hour to talk about it made my stomach sink. That night, I did not leave anything near the north wall. I moved every bucket, every crate, every loose object away from the lemon tree, away from anything that could become a step. I kept the bucket with the bag sealed tight, wedged behind tiles where a child would not find it. I left a lamp in the living room angled toward the patio, so the lemon tree shadow would show any movement. Elena asked what I was doing. I told her I was tired of the dogs barking and wanted to see what they saw. She watched me and did not argue, but her eyes kept drifting to my arm. When the neighborhood lights dimmed and the street grew quiet, I sat on my bed and listened. The ringing in my ears was still there. My forearm itched around the bruises. I kept telling myself it was stress, and the moment I said it, the memory of my name on that paper punched through the lie. The roof did not thump that night. The dogs barked once and then settled. I did not sleep much anyway. I stayed awake with a plan that was not a plan, just a decision. At first, I would take the sealed bucket to do a Maritza. I would put it on her table and let someone else tell me what I already feared. Ignoring a threat does not make it smaller. I had waited long enough. Before the sun came up, I carried the sealed bucket to do a Maritza's place. Street lights were still on, and the air smelled like cold cement and wet leaves. I held the bucket close, as if whatever was inside could hear it swing. Her house sat half a block away behind a rusted gate. A narrow passage led to a back patio with a laurel tree, a concrete wash basin, and a long wooden table stained by coffee and time. She opened the gate on the first knock. Her eyes went to my face, then to my forearm, then to the bucket. She asked what I had been feeling, not what I had found. I told her the ringing that never changed, the heaviness on my chest at night, the 2 clean bruises, the dog staring at my roof, the measured steps on the tiles, and the 2 bags placed under the lemon tree by the north wall. I told her about the silent call with breathing pressed to the phone. She nodded once, as if I had confirmed something she already suspected. She pointed to the table and gave me a clean cloth. No bare hands, she said. Lay it out clean. She said, do not mash wax into dirt. Her voice stayed steady, the way a mechanic's voice stays steady when telling you the brake line is gone. I opened the first bag. Wet dirt. Short gray feathers cut blunt and glued with dark wax. 2 long needles. A lock of hair tied with twine that smelled faintly of hairspray. A folded paper with my name in thick black marker, Mateo. Duaya Maritza leaned close without touching. Then she said, plain and cold, that the set was meant to take my life, not to scare me, not to bring bad luck, to drain me until something failed. I opened the transparent bag. Drier dirt, a strip of tape with yesterday's date written in black pen, a photo of me cut from an old birthday post, clean edges, no tearing. She said, it was the same point of attack repeated, name and photo together, tightened from above, the roof. She explained, turned the work into pressure, fatigue, and fights inside the house because it could be reinforced at any hour. I told her about the small things that had started to break our days, arguments over nothing, keys and receipts vanishing, and then reappearing where we had already looked, the brief dizzy spells at midday. She said that was how it spread, by grinding down the mind until the body followed. She did not give me a speech. She gave me steps. We isolated everything first. I poured the contents into a thick outer bag, tied it hard, taped the knot, then sealed it inside another bag. The bucket became a transport container, not storage. She told me leaving it near my patio was like leaving a hook in a wound. Then she sent me home with instructions. Shower fully and change sheets and pillowcases. To clean ones with no perfume. Air out the mattress. Clear the patio. Move pots and buckets away from the wall. Remove anything that could be used as a step. checked the roof and the wall for access and for residue. She said whoever did this was not a ghost. They were climbing. Back home, I followed the sequence in order: shower, fresh bedding, windows open. I stripped the patio bare and pushed everything away from the north wall. Then, I set the ladder and climbed to the roof in full daylight. Above my bedroom near the lemon tree corner, I saw a thin line of dry dirt trailing across the tiles like a path. On one tile, a smear of black wax crusted at the edge. On a nail, a short piece of red thread was caught, pulled tight, too bright to be random. I used cardboard to lift the thread and scrape the wax into an empty paint can. The line of dirt I left, because seeing it was enough. When I came down, the ringing in my ears eased slightly for the first time in days. It did not disappear, but it dropped, like something had loosened its grip. By late afternoon, there was another sign. On the cistern cover along the walkway to the kitchen, someone had drawn a closed circle with white powder and ash. Inside the ring were 2 finger marks pressed into it. I called Dua, a Maritza. She told me not to step on it. Dissolve it with water and detergent. Push it into the drain. Rinse 3 times. I did it until the concrete was clean and wet. At dusk, she met me at the corner with the sealed bucket and the paint can. A neighbor drove us to a municipal container outside our block. We shoved the package deep inside and covered it with heavy construction bags. She said the important part was distance. If the work could be found nearby, it could be used again. On the way back, she pointed out how someone had likely reached my roof. A guava branch from the neighbor's yard arched toward my tiles, and an old plank had been left leaning near the side passage. We cut the branch back as far as we could and dragged the plank into the garage. We left the patio empty and the wall clean. Then she suggested a quiet watch before dawn. Not a challenge, she said, a confirmation. If the roof sounded, we would light it up. If someone came down into the patio, we would let witnesses do the rest. I kept a whistle in my pocket, a lamp in the living room aimed at the yard, so the lemon tree shadow would show movement. Dua Maritza waited in her own patio with a view of my roof edge. Near the deepest part of night, something moved at the top of the north wall. A thin figure eased into view, low and deliberate. A foot tested the lemon tree trunk, like a step. A hand steadied on the bark. In the other hand was a white plastic bag. Around the wrist was a short, coiled rope. The figure slid down toward the main root and felt the soil, searching for the old hole that had been there days before. My stomach tightened so hard it hurt. I snapped on the patio light, the yard filled with white glare. I blew the whistle 3 times. 2 more patios lit up. A metal gate banged open. From Dua Maritza's side came a hard bang of iron on iron. The woman tried to fold behind the tree, but the light caught her. She was older and hunched. Her fingernails looked long. When she turned, her teeth flashed in a sharp line that made my mouth go dry. Fear hit me fast, but I forced myself to speak loud enough to carry. Get off my wall. Leave my house alone. Dua Maritza struck her gate again. The woman spun toward the passage, tripped over a coiled hose, and the white bag slipped from her hand. She recovered and ran into the corner of the street where the shadows were thicker. I did not chase her. I kept the door locked and my eyes on what she left behind. The dropped bag was tied tight like a knot you do not expect to untie. Through the plastic, I could see a small glass jar packed with wet dirt and wax, a folded paper, a handful of coarse salt, and 2 rusty pins. It was the same pattern, assembled and ready. I double-knotted the bag and slid it into a thicker, clean one. When I lifted the paper enough to glimpse it through the plastic, I saw my name again in dark marker. Simple, final, like a receipt for something I had not agreed to buy. Dua Maritza came through the side door a minute later, breathing hard from crossing her own yard. She looked at the bag from the outside and said, without drama, that it was the same work as before, and it had to be removed the same way. She pointed up at the roof edge above my room, the corner that lined up with the lemon tree wall. The point, she said, was always the same. I set the ladder and climbed. The tiles were damp, with night moisture. Near the edge, I could see faint grooves where dry dirt had been brushed aside, and the spot where I had scraped wax earlier looked disturbed. Not rebuilt, just used. There was no fresh candle smear, no new thread, but the path of dirt showed where feet had been. That was enough. I climbed down with my hands still shaking. We swept the base of the lemon tree again and washed the strip of patio along the wall with detergent and water until the runoff turned clear. The cistern cover, stayed clean after the earlier scrubbing. Then I sealed the dropped bag inside another thicker one, tied it hard, and carried it to the neighbor's pickup with Dosia Maritza at my side. We drove to the same municipal container outside the block. This time I did not hesitate. I pushed the package deep into the dark belly of the bin and buried it under heavy construction bags. On the ride back, the streetlight in front of my house stopped flickering, as if someone had finally tightened a loose connection. We did not waste breath on omens. We had 3 nights of noise on the roof, 3 bags aimed at the same spot, and a woman caught in the light. When I walked back into my house before dawn, I checked the patio, the wall, and the roof line one more time. Everything was where we had left it. I locked the door, set the whistle on the nightstand, and listened to the quiet like it was new. The moment my head hit the pillow, the weight on my chest eased. I slept in one unbroken stretch, deep enough that I did not hear the first morning sounds of the street. When I woke, the ringing in my ears was still there, but it felt distant, like a noise from another room. I checked my forearms out of habit. No new bruises. Elena watched me at breakfast, waiting for a joke that would make the last few days feel normal. Sophia ate quietly, eyes on her bowl. I did not tell them every detail from the night, only that someone had been trespassing and that it was handled. Saying more would have put the fear back in the walls. Late that morning, I went to speak with the block coordinator, the man who handled complaints and arranged small night rounds when trouble hit our street. I told him what had happened in plain terms: bags buried at the base of the lemon tree, footsteps on my roof, and a woman caught entering my patio with another tied bag. I told him 2 neighbors had seen the lights and heard the whistle. I pointed to the roof corner that dropped toward the north wall and to the climb points we had cut. He said they would start walking the block at night for a while, and he would warn everyone to keep walls clear of buckets, planks, and anything that could be used as steps. Back home, I repeated the practical part of what had worked. I kept the patio empty near the wall. I kept the plank stored in the guava branch cut back. I washed the lemon tree base every few days, not as a ritual, but because I wanted the ground to show any disturbance immediately. The dogs next door stopped staring at my roof. The Tinaco water level stayed steady. The street lights stopped flickering. Days passed without a new bag. Dua Maritza stopped by twice, looking at the roof corner from her side, then at the soil under the lemon tree. She found no fresh dirt line, no wax residue, no thread. The house slowly found its old rhythm again. The gas truck music, the water delivery horn, a motorcycle passing in late afternoon. It felt strange how quickly ordinary sound can return when danger leaves. About a week later, the ringing in my ears disappeared completely. One morning, I realized my back had not been stiff when I got up. The bruises faded to pale yellow, then vanished. Elena laughed at something on television without forcing it. Sophia stopped asking if she could sleep with the light on. I kept thinking about what had actually saved us. It was not a dramatic curse breaking. It was clearing access, cutting the climb points, removing the materials far from our block, and acting early before fear turned into paralysis. Sometimes survival is just refusing to give a stranger an extra night. What I never learned was why I was chosen. Maybe it was a grudge. Maybe it was a misunderstanding that grew teeth. Maybe it was random, the way some people get picked by thieves and others do not. That uncertainty is its own kind of haunt, because it means you cannot reason your way into safety. If you ever find something buried with your name on it, do not treat it like a curiosity. Do not leave it in your yard and hope it stops. On streets like mine, roofs connect like stepping stones, and the worst part is how quiet a careful person can be while they ruin your sleep.